"Buy me, cowboy," the most beautiful Apache slave said when she saw the man at the market. The marketplace of Red Hollow churned with noise as traders, ranchers and drifters moved about, but all of it dimmed around the wooden auction platform standing in the center. On that raised plank stood an Apache woman, barefoot, proud even in captivity, her posture steady despite everything she had endured. Her clothing was simple, a tied buckskin top with short fringe and a matching skirt that fell just above her knees, each piece worn but dignified. Her dark hair hung loose, falling over her shoulders like a curtain that failed to hide the fire in her eyes. Behind her, a rough wooden board announced for sale. The letters burned into the planks as if branding her identity. Men stood below the platform, studying her like cattle, measuring her with looks that carried hunger, mockery, and ownership. But she remained untouched by their judgment, holding stillness like a weapon no one else in the marketplace understood. Among the shifting crowd stood a rancher, a man with a weathered hat, rolled sleeves, and a belt that carried the tools of someone who worked the land, not someone searching for another person to claim. He had followed the noise out of curiosity, not intent, but when he saw her standing above the crowd with a quiet strength that refused to break, he stopped as though his boots had sunk into the earth. His eyes lingered, not out of desire but confusion, wondering how someone could remain unshaken in a place designed to break the spirit. The auctioneer slapped the wooden frame to get everyone's attention, shouting about strength, labor, and obedience, trying to stir the crowd into a frenzy. Numbers flew as men shouted bids, each trying to prove they owned more coin and less soul than the next. Yet the rancher stayed silent, watching her with a look she had not seen in days, a look that did not attempt to judge or claim her. She noticed, even with her chin lowered in defiance, she felt his gaze, steady, uncertain, almost reluctant, when a nearby rancher made a crude remark followed by a bid, meant to demean her more than purchase her. She flinched so subtly no one noticed except the silent man, and that tiny reaction pulled something inside him taut. She raised her eyes slightly, studying him. He didn't greet her with cruelty or curiosity. He looked at her as if trying to understand, not claim. Something in that steadiness made her step forward on the platform, leaning just enough that her shadow fell near him. The crowd kept shouting. The auctioneer kept bragging. But in the pocket of space between her and the quiet man, time slowed. Then she spoke quiet, but clear enough that he heard her over the noise. "Buy me, cowboy." The words held no plea. They carried strategy, urgency, and a flicker of trust she offered like a gamble. His expression froze, stunned not by the demand, but by the sharp command wrapped inside it. She leaned slightly. Closer, eyes locked with his. "By me," she repeated, her voice low and firm. Before one of them does, her face revealed a blend of fear and determination, a strength trying to disguise desperation. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was choosing the only man who looked capable of not destroying what little was left of her freedom. The rancher's breath caught. Something inside him recognized that the moment he stepped back, someone else would step forward and take her life in a direction she clearly feared. Before the auctioneer could drop the hammer on the latest high bid, a crude rancher who laughed as he shouted, the quiet man suddenly called out a number that made the crowd gasp. Even the auctioneer blinked, his mouth parting in surprise before slamming the hammer. Down, sold. The murmur of disappointment and resentment rippled through the crowd. But the rancher paid no mind. He stepped closer as the Apache woman descended from the platform, moving with the same controlled grace she had maintained while standing above them. He didn't reach for her arm or guide her like property. He simply stepped aside, giving her space, showing respect where others would have imposed control. She walked beside him automatically, not in obedience, but because she had chosen him over the wolves who had circled beneath the platform. For a long moment they said nothing. She studied him, measuring him with trained instincts, weighing whether she had gambled correctly. He could feel her eyes tracking his movements, reading him with a sharpness he had never encountered. Still, he didn't speak. He didn't ask her name or justify his actions. He just kept walking, leading her away from the men who would have torn her spirit apart. And in that silence, she sensed something she hadn't felt since before her capture. Possibility. Their fates had crossed at the edge of a wooden platform, and now walking side by side, both understood that what came next would not be easy, simple, or safe, but it would be theirs to face together. When they left the marketplace behind, the noise softened into distance, but the weight of their choices pressed between them like a third presence. The rancher untied the loose rope still hanging from her wrist, working the knot apart with a gentleness she had not felt from a stranger in a long time. She watched the movement of his fingers with guarded curiosity. His hands were strong, scarred from labor but careful, unlike the hands that had dragged her into captivity. Once the rope fell away, she looked at him not with gratitude, but with the sharp evaluation of someone deciding whether to trust. He didn't wait for thanks. He simply nodded toward the outskirts of town and began walking. She followed, keeping pace evenly beside him. After a stretch of silence, she finally spoke. "You didn't hesitate back there." He glanced at her. "When you told me to buy you." She nodded. Most men would have questioned it. He considered his words before speaking. Most men weren't. "The reason you said it." Her lips twitched with the faintest hint of approval. "You noticed why I chose you?" "I noticed enough," he said, remembering the fear she'd hidden from the others. She turned her gaze forward again. "Right choices cost more than people expect," he smirked. "I paid enough to learn that." When they reached his horse, she stopped abruptly, eyes scanning the horizon. "The men who captured me weren't hunting for reward," she said. "They were working for someone." Her tone turned sharper, more dangerous. "Someone who wants me returned." He stiffened. "Why?" She hesitated, struggling between silence and trust, then finally said, "Because I ran from the life forced on me, from a man who claims me as his, because of some tradition he twisted to serve himself." Her jaw clenched. "He won't accept my escape." The rancher felt heat rise in his chest, not anger at her, but at whoever believed she belonged to them. "So they'll follow us?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, and now they'll believe you took what they think is theirs." He waited for fear to surface in her eyes, but it never did. The only emotion she carried was readiness. "If they come," he said, "we'll deal with them." Her eyes widened slightly, not expecting him to take her side so quickly. "You don't know what kind of trouble that brings." "Doesn't matter," he said. "You asked for help." "I gave it." She searched his face, trying to find the selfish motive that usually hid behind such promises. Finding none, her posture softened. Only for a moment, they rode together to his ranch. She didn't cling or lean into him. She sat with the balance of someone who had learned survival on unsteady ground. When they arrived, she dismounted before he could offer a hand, surveying the land as if mapping escape routes and defensive angles. "Quiet place," she said. "Too quiet for what follows me." "Then well be ready," he replied. She turned to him, testing him with a slow, sharp stare. "You and me." "If you stay," he said. Her eyes narrowed, not in rejection but in thought. After a moment, she nodded. "For now, I stay." Inside the cabin, she examined the space. Simple, sturdy, honest. She touched nothing, but her eyes traced every corner, memorizing what she could use if danger came. The rancher watched her silently, sensing that everything she did, even breathing, was shaped by survival. Later, she sat outside, sharpening a blade she had hidden in her boot. Sparks flickered off the metal as she worked. The rancher joined her on the steps, careful not to crowd her. "Those men," he said, "how soon will they come?" She didn't pause her sharpening. Soon enough, he absorbed that answer, feeling the shift in the air between them. Not fear, preparation. She finally lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes with a steadiness that rooted him. "When I told you to buy me," she said quietly, "I didn't know if you'd help me or hand me back. And now?" he asked. She looked toward the distant hills, where shadows moved far beyond normal travelers. "Now I see you stand by. Your choices." She rose, sliding the blade into her boot. "Good," she said, "because they're coming." He stood beside her, both facing the horizon as dark shapes approached. Slow but certain, she glanced at him, repeating the words that had bound their futures together. "You bought me, cowboy." This time the words held no desperation, only truth. Promise and warning. He nodded once. And I'll stand by that choice. Side by side, they waited for the trouble that hunted her.